Right, and if I was to move this back, yeah, something like this would de-trigger, and then I'd have to keep, yeah, a translation would present a problem. All right, so it looks like in settling on this, I've started to realize that it will have somewhat of a downside when the spine joints are translated. Let me see the front too. So if I was to do a crunch, but there was any translation of a sort, it would de-trigger. So what this lets me know immediately is that there needs to be some type of a position constraint. All right, so let me zero out the chest. So the resolution would be to create a point constraint that allows the chest to have control of the translation of this goal, right? Nothing but the translation, because we want to make sure that it is moving when we translate any of these spine joints. So that is a fairly easy thing to do. It would just be a matter of seeking out our goals, right, their const group, and creating a point constraint relationship with this chest joint. So if I grab this chest joint and I grab my goal const group, I can go constrain, point constraint, maintain offset, apply. And I'll do the same back here. I'd seek out my goal group, right, this const group, select my chest joint, select that const group, and go apply. All right, so now let's test this out. If I was to trigger, and let's say I got a triggering like so, and I was to translate the chest, I'm considering what would happen if the position constraint happened directly on this goal locator. So if I was to select the chest and select this locator and create a position constraint with offset, then a rotation works just as expected, right? The goals get to each other. I might definitely have to use the adjust node here. And if I was to move the chest, no, it's having a difficult time holding the position of this goal. All that's telling me is that this decision that I've made to use these groups, these overarching groups, might not be the best idea. These locators just need to be sitting in space, and their parent, for the most part, shouldn't be anything on this spine. But the primary thing I need to be concerned about is ensuring that the locators are translating with the chest by themselves. Because if I was to zero this out and I was to take this locator, this goal locator, let me remove this parent constraint. Sorry, this point constraint. All right, if I was to take this locator out of here, let's say Shift P, right? It doesn't have an adjuster, it doesn't have a group, it's just sitting over there. And I have it in location, like so. Then I have a goal to travel to, but now the issue would be how to make sure that it's moving with the chest. And that would be a very simple thing to resolve. I'd just grab the chest joint and now do a position constraint directly with that goal. So if I was to go constraint, I was to go point constraint, maintain offset, apply, then now that position constraint is not going to affect my rotation in any way. I'm still going to be able to get to my goal. But now if I was to translate this chest, the locators move together and it does not de-trigger the sculpt deformer. So I wanted to take you guys on this discovery process with me, just so you can see how I come up with the locator solutions. It's not a new thing to use locators and distance nodes to trigger things like this, but the solutions you go for will differ based off of what you need. So what I thought I needed, I didn't need, right? I thought I needed a a whole lot more than I did. So these additional groups are redundant in this particular case. And my even intention of having this goal locator parented to this chain somehow was completely wrong. It doesn't need to be parented to the chain in any way. So that's something that's worth taking a note of. All right, so that is pretty much the solution. This chest rotating backward will keep the abdominals detriggered. Rotating forward would trigger it. Translation in any direction would not impact or de-trigger. And even in this position, if I was to rotate, I still have my trigger. Even in a case like this where I'm rotated, it'll be slightly de-triggered, but that's not enough of a distance to de-trigger it. So the goal locators should not be part of the chain. They should just be in space and point constrained to the chest. So I'm going to zero these out. Now that I've established this, I should perhaps make sure I have a locator that's more zeroed out, has better initial values. All right, so let me undo a bit to get rid of this constraint and just get some good initial values for this locator. Not necessarily with position, but at least with rotation. Zero it out. Just so I have a little bit of a cleaner locator in view. Same to the one over here. I'm going to go Shift B, get it out of its group. And I do have to make sure to clear out these groups now because they're not needed. All this additional naming that I did. I'm going to delete them. And I'm also going to zero out the rotation here. And set the translation to 1. All right, and now with the position that both of them are in, this is where I want to do my constraining. Grab my goals and constrain them one by one. Go apply. And do the same for the one for the rib cage. And go apply. Okay, so that's the system. Translating, moves everything. Rotating, makes these locators go closer to each other to trigger my sculpt deformer. And going too far would for sure de-trigger them. So I do have to rely on the adjuster, the one adjuster that I have for the trigger to ensure that in certain positions like this would be a very good position to have a trigger. So if I have something like this, I don't want too much of a de-triggering of my vacuum and my rib cage. This is fine. Abdominals, I don't need to go all the way here. If I'm past this point here and I'm getting a de-trigger, it's not so much of an issue because I will be overdriving anyway. So I would be expecting to do a lot more rotation, well, a lot less rotation in the front to get a result, and a lot more rotation in the back to get a result. So what that means I have to do is start playing around with my adjuster in the back and make sure it's a lot farther off, right? So it's somewhere here, so that if I was to say rotate this much, I'm not particularly getting any triggering, and the most around there, if I'm expecting a triggering around here, like here, is about where I would want the most amount of triggering. So I might have gone too far. So I'd grab this and get my adjuster to come back down just a little bit to about that much. All right, so I just needed about 15 degrees. All right, so if this was zeroed out, yeah, that's about how much I need. So if I rotate like that, around here, I should start getting my stomach vacuum. And if I was to go like this, I max out. And then I'll always have the manual values to overemphasize the effect. But past here, not too worried. It won't be too de-triggered. Maybe past here, then to start trying to de-trigger, in which case you can use the manual controls, but this isn't exactly a pose I might have to worry about, right? About here to be completely de-triggered. Let me actually see what the distance would be for the default. So it's a distance of 13 will de-trigger it. So if I was to come down like this at about 7 or 6, I'll get half as much intensity of the effect. And anything beyond that, now I'm really starting to lose it. Yeah, so that might not be good because this is a reasonable, when I look at this is a fairly reasonable amount of backward rotation. So I do think I have to go with a higher number, a much higher number for this adjusting. All right, so I'm going to go all the way over there. Just take a look. Yes. Yeah, this is good. I may have not been thinking about it properly. This is fine to overdrive the value. Over here, maybe I'll overdrive it to like a 1.5 or 1.4. The sculpt deformers will be cranked up to 1.4, or the blend shapes will be cranked up to 1.4. And then beyond that, here, anything past that, I'm worrying about a de-trigger. But even that de-trigger wouldn't be that bad because it would just be de-triggering to about 1. So even at a completely impossible pose like this, I'll have the effect triggered at 1. So I just have to make sure that when the locator is on here, its closest, I have cranked up the blend shape to about a 1.3, 1.4. And that way, anything within that vicinity will generate me a 1. This will generate me a 1, and so will this. Right, this will generate me a 1. All right, so I think the back is good. I have to do the same type of analysis in the front. Just a little bit of movement, I would expect to see abdominals, right? So maybe exactly over it, I would max out the value to about 1.4. So if I went any past, I still have a trigger of 1 here. And then beyond that, I'll start getting a de-trigger around here. So all I really have to worry about is whether this is a reasonable pose to end up in. And if it is a reasonable pose, I don't really want to completely de-trigger it. So this is another scenario where I do have to go to that adjuster. And I appear to have not named this one correctly. I have to make sure this is the const and this is the adjust. So in a scenario like this, I'd want to grab my adjuster and let's try a little bit of a higher rotation. So around here, slowly starting to trigger. Maybe about here I get a 1. Somewhere down here I get a maximum of 1.4 or so. And then I'll still be at a 1 here. All right, so that is the locator system that I'm going to be counting on